I would like to acknowledge the Turrbal people, the traditional custodians of this land on which I live and work. I thank them for and acknowledge the ongoing relationship with country and all that is inherent with country of ancestral domains. I would also like to honour and pay respects to elders both past, present and future, and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians, fellow students and colleagues. I would also like to forewarn that this story contains images and may contain voices of deceased persons. I walk around my local area in the northern suburbs of Brisbane, mindful of my surroundings, consciously looking for something, anything that commemorates Indigenous people on whose very land I stand. Shockingly, I see nothing, not a single memorial or commemorative marker to anyone or anything relating to Indigenous Australia or Indigenous Australians. As I drive down Waterworks Road, which covers traditional tracks and which was once the place of honeybee dreaming near the original site of the Turrbal people, Dundee Maywar, now named the Brisbane River, I again don't see anything. These traditional tracks and areas have been extincted, with nothing to denote them as traditional land or remember any of the hero warriors of the Indigenous people. As I drive further into the city, I think of the persecution and subjugation the Indigenous people had to endure. How catastrophic it must be for these beautiful people to still feel and have to suffer from the repercussions of this oppression and forced assimilation all these many years later. This made me think to other symbols in our environment and culture that recognise and honour the European invaders at the expense of the Indigenous culture. This mindfulness gave way to a humility and awareness of what Indigenous Australians are exposed to and confronted with on a daily basis, particularly that of the all-pervasive reverence to Britain, such as money, which, apart from one side of the $50 note and one side of the $2 coin, are all covered in the Queen's face or that of white Europeans. There are hospitals named after royalty such as Prince this or Princess that or Royal such and such. Even the Australian flag has the Union Jack on it to honour Britain. Australia was given the chance to vote for a republic, which would have removed many of the blatant reminders of the invasion, but this was rejected by the majority of the Australian voting public. The incessant barrage of symbols and recognitions of the very Europeans that invaded and took over the lives and their land are part of everyday life for the Indigenous Australians. And they do not have, unlike white Australians, the privilege of not having to pay attention to it. It seems a fundamental hypocrisy that even when the government looks into the abuse or treatment of Indigenous Australians, they will call it the Royal Commission, or when land is uninhabited and it should be called native title, it is called Crown Land. However, we know that no non-Indigenous Australian is forced to conform to Indigenous Australian customs, laws or tributes. Rather, the Indigenous Australians have no choice but to advocate for themselves within the white European framework that has been in place since the very day of the invasion. This ongoing preservation of the marginalisation of Indigenous Australians, symbolic and otherwise, is galling, and as a nation and community we must work together to rectify this.